All right, so this is the review for the Unit 2 test. This one will definitely be a little bit more difficult than the last one, but it's definitely not impossible. There's just a lot more information on this one. So I'll go ahead and get going. So again, like the last one, I'm going over the test. I'm literally looking at it on the computer right now, and I'm going question by question, hitting the main ideas that you need to know. So first off, subsistence agriculture. So you should know what that is. That's basically where people farm to just provide for their families, and they're not producing enough to actually sell outside of that. And so in your poorest countries on earth, a lot of the people are practicing subsistence agriculture. All right, and then obviously you need to know what culture is. You should know the definition of culture, why we study culture. Whereas the big idea there is to understand other values and beliefs and be able to find common ground with others. And then key terms you need to know. You should know the term innovation. So that's when we take, like an existing technology and we improve upon it, make it better. So you can look at early phones, like in the early 1900s compared to now, or even just how cell phones have changed over the years. It's a form of innovation. Assimilation is whenever you move to another country, and so you're in a different culture and you begin taking on that culture. You start speaking their language, you start celebrating their holidays, things like that. You're assimilating to what it is that they do. Diffusion is the idea basically it's the idea of moving and spreading. So it could be an idea, it could be something that people buy, like a product or something like that. It starts in one place and it spreads. So like Coca-Cola, for example, started in Atlanta, now it's global. Blue Jeans started here in the United States, now they're pretty much global. So that's the idea of diffusion. And of course you can look at that with religion as well. Religious beliefs starting in a certain area and look at where they are today. All right, another key term as well is acculturation. So that's when a culture decides to adopt an innovation. So India sees blue jeans, and they're like, we'd like to wear that. And so you start seeing people in India wearing blue jeans. That's a form of acculturation, that culture has adopted something that they see in a different culture. All right, and then, so again, know in detail ideas of innovation, assimilation, diffusion, acculturation. And you should be good there. To be a couple of questions about those. All right, and then early civilizations, we mentioned this briefly, but early civilizations were all built around rivers. And so if we talk about the cultural hearse, which remember, that's where civilization started. It was, in Egypt along the Nile River, in Mesopotamia along the Tigris and Euphrates River, in India along the Indus River Valley, and in China along the Huanghe and Yangtze rivers. So it's always around rivers is where early civilization started. And even if you look at all your major cities from the past thousands of years of history, they're all along rivers. All right, and then infrastructure. So that key term is going to pop up a lot. So again, to have a strong economy, you must have a strong infrastructure. So you may have amazing natural resources like oil, but if you don't have the infrastructure to extract that oil and actually get it to market in a good way, then you're not going to make that much money. All right, then the different types of economies. So we talked about traditional, mixed, free enterprise, and communist. So remember, traditional is bartering. A free enterprise, same thing as a market economy. So that's where consumer demand determines, what is produced. And then, of course, communist or a command economy is where the government controls everything and decides what is produced. And mix is where you mix in certain elements of free enterprise and command economy. So you have a little bit of socialism in there, basically, which technically the United States and your European countries, most of your European countries, are some form of a mixed economy. All right, and then again, infrastructure. And remember with infrastructure that it's things that are key to society to function. So, things that have to do with entertainment and stuff like that would not count as infrastructure. But obviously, like schools, hospitals, things like that would count. All right, and then your religions, know basic things like where people worship. So Christians worship in a church, Jews in a synagogue, Muslims in a mosque, Buddhists and Hindus in a temple. Holy books, the Bible for Christians, for Jews, the Torah, for Muslims, the Quran. Buddhism, basically, follow the Four Noble Truths, and for Hinduism, would be the Vedas. So just know those key points. You should be good there, and also where the religion started, what region of the world. Again, some more on infrastructure, some more on innovation. And then, like I said, know where the religions originated, such as Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Just know where in the world those started. Make sure you understand how to read a population pyramid and what a population pyramid is telling you, the kind of information you can get from that. And then going back to religion again. Now, push and pull factors. This one, I at least didn't really talk much about this. So push and pull factors have to do with really immigration, why people move. So a push factor is the reason why people may leave an area, and a pull factor is the reason why they would go to that area. So for example, someone may leave Texas and move to Colorado because it's cooler than Colorado. So a push factor would be that it's really hot in Texas. Another push factor could be is that it's really flat here and there's no mountains, and maybe you think mountains are really pretty. So the pull factor for Colorado is that it's cooler temperatures and it's got pretty mountains. So push and pull factors, a lot of times it may be around, crime, living standards, access to jobs, those kind of things would be your big push and pull factors. All right, and then know your different types of governments and economies, which I already mentioned the economies. So, know those. I'll get into those here in a second a little bit more. So make sure you know your levels of economic activity, so primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. So primary, again, is just gathering raw materials. It's not actually adding any value to it yet, so just picking cotton or fishing. Secondary is where you add value to that. So now you take the cotton you picked and now you go and you make it to a t-shirt at a factory. And so now you're adding value to it. You're making more money at that level. So countries where they have most of their people working at the secondary level are going to be industrializing. So it's a developing country. Tertiary, the synonym for that would be the service industry, the service level. So that's jobs like teachers and doctors and lawyers and things like that. And so if you want most of your people working at that level, if the majority of your people are working at the tertiary level, then you have a strong economy. And then quaternary is the research and things like that. So basically the people that run these giant systems. So think about the people that run Amazon, like Amazon.com. All the logistics that goes into that, planning that all out, making sure all those shipments actually work. People at that high level are going to be quaternary level and make the most money. All right, and then obviously there's going to be some maps and charts you need to be able to read. Remember, again, the synonyms for a market economy, so free market economy, capitalism, free enterprise, that's all the same thing. And then make sure you know the idea of urbanization, so the fact that a lot of people over the past 100 years have been moving from agricultural areas, from rural areas into cities, and so that's urbanization. So obviously an urban area is going to be a large city, rural area will be in the countryside like on a farm. And then there'll be some political cartoon, but it should be self-explanatory on that. Remember also, too, in developed countries like the United States, we're not growing as fast. We're not having as many babies compared to the less developed world. Less developed world has way more babies than we do. All right, and then physical features, understanding where we see large populations living. For the most part, we see, the biggest areas are going to be in the flat areas, flat fertile plains, along rivers is where we see the densest populations in the world. All right, now going to the different types of governments. So obviously democracy, that's what we live in. That's where the people rule, through elections and stuff like that. Dictatorship is obviously where you have a dictator ruling and controlling the country. A theocracy is where the religious leader is also the political leader. A lot of times it will be a dictatorship, so you may have a theocratic dictatorship. Totalitarian, so remember that's where they have total control over everything you do in your life, like the haircut you can have, the things you can say, the things you can think, which are allowed to learn. All that is controlled by the government, so that's a totalitarian. They have total control. Monarchy, of course, that's like a king or queen. Rule comes through who, if you're born into the family, basically. And so just know basics about that, and you should be good. Know the basic beliefs of the different religions we talked about, as far as what they believe about the afterlife, how you get to heaven, those kind of things, what they believe about God or the gods. And then, again, know your different types of resources: inexhaustible, renewable, and non-renewable. So remember, a renewable resource can be like trees. It's something that we can bring back. We can replant them, but we still have to be careful with them because we could decimate an entire ecosystem if we just take it all out all at once. Inexhaustible is things like solar energy, wind power, hydropower, things that we cannot run out of. So those are the best resources, really, because you can never run out. And then non-renewable make you the most money, like oil, but eventually oil will run out and we won't have any more. And so just make sure you know those different ones. And then getting into back to language, early on we talked about different dialects and stuff like that. So for example, how I say y'all, but it's kind of a southern thing. Or some people, when they talk about Coke, they may say pop. And so that would be a different version. We're still speaking English, but we're using different words. So that's a dialect. All right, and then almost the last thing, borders. So we talked about natural and man-made borders. So if you're looking at a map, you should be able to pick out which ones are which. Again, natural borders are usually rivers, and so the lines are going to be squiggly. Then man-made borders are always going to be straight lines. We're using lines of latitude and longitude to create those borders. All right, and the last thing is really just about the demographic transition model. So again, if you just go back to my notes, the video on economics that's on Google Classroom, you can check that out and see the end there as far as the 3 different stages that a country goes through, from really high birth and death rates to a high birth rate and low death rate, and then to low birth and death rates but a higher population. So just you can go back and review over that, and you should be good. And that's it for Unit 2.